Next, National Weather Service, John Paul Martin.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I sure wish there was more room on that flight yesterday. The National Weather Service, we would have gone with you if there was more room. If you had asked me, what is the National Weather Service doing a little differently this in 2013 than we did in 2011, I would say that in the past we have relied too heavily on people's reports and haven't gotten our own eyes on the river. So this past week, on Tuesday, a team of us from the Weather Service in Bismarck drove the Mouse River so we can get our eyes on it and see what's happening. Interestingly, the reports that the mayor and the commissioner have presented are exactly what we saw. We drove up to Mouse River Park, as far north as Mouse River Park, and met with Christy Titus, the emergency manager there, and the water was coming through the channel there at the park. There was ice on the river there. We noticed the same thing from the dam all the way down to Logan was open water, and somewhere between Logan and Sawyer is where you started running into the ice. And we're expecting that'll slowly go downstream, that ice pack. The frozen top of the river will slowly be eroding away as we go through this weekend and into next week. General Sprinsanatic mentioned communications. Folks have asked the National Weather Service, what are you doing differently to get your information out? Well, communications is a big key with the National Weather Service. Historically, we have issued watches for rivers maybe 2 or 3 days ahead of time, and then a warning within 24 hours of the event. This year, we have posted watches at Sherwood and downstream of there at Foxholm Gauge and through Minot much earlier, on the order of 4 or 5 days ahead of when we expect the river to reach flood stage. Our warnings, instead of issuing them a day ahead, we've issued those warnings in some cases 3 days ahead. Now that's a tough one because we issue these products, a river watch or a warning for flooding, and then nothing happens for 2 or 3 or 4 days. And folks start to wonder, well, I thought they issued a watch or I thought they issued a warning. Again, we're trying to get these products out. We're trying to communicate with the public earlier than what we historically have done. As far as communication with your local officials, Mayor Grunberg had mentioned emergency management. The second we learn anything new or change, we're in communication with emergency management, not only at the local level, but at the state level with General Sprinsanatic's Department of Emergency Services and Greg Wills there. We're trying, as soon as we learn something, even if we don't have the full picture, we're trying to convey the information as we're receiving it. I want to touch on 2 more things. One is that we have to be careful because we're getting a lot of calls at the Weather Service saying, well, the flow at the river gauge is showing this, and the height is that, and what's happening, and more water is coming than you think. We need to be careful that when you're looking at a river gauge measurement where there's ice on the river, the ice is impacting that reading. We're measuring the top of the ice. We're dropping the wire weight down. If it's a manual reading, we're dropping that down, and we're reading the top of the ice layer. So that's what it would be, the flow. That's what the flow would be if it were open water. But it's not. We may have 6 inches or a foot of ice there. So the flow may not be what it should be had that been the stage in open water. I hope that's clear. The other thing we have to be careful of is, if you have a river gauge upstream of a confluence, immediately upstream of a confluence of 2 waterways meeting, you could be getting some backwater at the gauge. So the gauge would be showing a level at, let's use for example 10 feet, and whatever the flow is at that level, the water is at 10 feet, but it's not flowing at whatever the cubic feet per second measurement corresponds to, because the water is backing up into that area. And we've had those issues with some gauges in Saskatchewan. So just to emphasize, when you look at that information, there's a lot that goes into it. So we really have to be careful in making too many assumptions on what we're seeing at those gauges. Last thing I want to talk about, and then we'll be glad to take questions afterward, is the forecast for this weekend. Everybody up and down the Mouse River needs to be preparing, right, for the potential of flooding. But we have something to deal with almost immediately, and that's a storm, a very significant major winter storm this weekend. Snow should begin in the Mouse River Basin before midnight tomorrow night, Saturday night, continue through the day Sunday and through Sunday night. Right now, it looks like the hardest hit areas will be along the Highway 2 corridor. So Minot should receive a significant amount of snow. And on the order right now, we're expecting that we could see as much as 8 to 12 inches of snow along the Highway 2 corridor with this storm. I think we need to be thankful that it's not warm enough that that's rain, that it's coming as snow, and hopefully we can slowly melt it off. I think a little bit of good news also is that earlier this week, it looked like southeast Saskatchewan would be the hardest hit. And now the system is shifting south. So where it looked like the heaviest snow would be north of the Canadian dams, north of Alameda, Boundary, and Rafferty, now that's shifted south. Okay? And from our experience, from our going up, driving the river on Tuesday, we've lost quite a bit of snow cover, especially south of Minot, but also between Minot and Kenmare. And then north of Kenmare, it's pretty much all white. But we have lost quite a bit of snow. The water is not pooling, so that means it's probably getting into the ground a little bit. And so that's a good thing too, because now we're kind of making room on the hillsides to receive more snow this weekend. At this point, we have a winter storm watch, and as I was leaving the office with Corey this morning, the team at the weather office in Bismarck was trying to decide at what point do we need to upgrade that to a warning, and for what areas. Thank you very much.
Okay, now I think I'll have our Assistant Public Works Director come up and just kind of give an idea of where we think we're at here in the city and what, as far as our protection plan, and then we're going to take questions right after that.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon. After the 2011 event, we worked very closely with the Corps when they did all the dike removals, and our current level of protection is at or above where it was prior to the 2011 event. So we're pretty confident with where our diking is at, our levees. We are constantly monitoring. Our biggest concern at this point is probably internal drainage. We have a lot of storm sewers that run out to the river. Some of those have become submerged underwater right now, so the water doesn't make it to the river, so we have pumps in place. We've been running those. We have contingency plans for different levels of flow. We have low spots identified where if we need to, we'll go out, we'll fill those areas with sandbags, clay, whatever it needs to be. At this point, we've filled about 3,000 sandbags just as a precaution, just in case we need a quick response somewhere where we can grab them and go. They're out of Public Works. We have sandbags available. There's a pile of sand out at the Public Works office. If people want to fill, they're welcome to out there. But mainly that's about it. With the current flows we're seeing, we're pretty confident with what we've got. So.
Okay, we'll open it up.